I'd love to start with a raise of hands in the audience. Who here lives and works in the center of the USA, sometimes known as flyover country? Okay, well, not very many of you. It's nice to see those of you who do. Well, I am Rachel, and I do live in flyover country. I live in St. Louis, sometimes known as St. Louis, but is the unceded territory of the Osage people. And I haven't always lived in flyover country, though. About 4 years ago, I was sitting on a very dusty floor in my kids' walk-in wardrobe, a few miles up the road in a sunset in San Francisco. My head was surrounded by princess dresses and robot costumes. And I was crying. I just got a phone call from my husband, who told me that after a very long search, he'd found a job, and we were almost certainly going to have to move to St. Louis in Missouri. I was devastated. I thought for sure my career would be over. But more than that, I'd heard about how people talk about people who work and live in the center of the country, and it wasn't good. I thought I was going to be moving to a place of backwardness and bigotry. I'm not from the USA. I was brought up in my parents' garden in the English countryside with the apple trees and the roses, and I went on to move to London, where I co-founded a project called the Finance Innovation Lab, which was launched in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, the biggest crisis since the Great Depression. It was a partnership between the Institute of Chartered Accountants and WWF, and really a big fat experiment in bringing together people who don't normally talk to each other in that moment of crisis. We experimented with building accelerator programs and brought policy coalitions together. We hosted hundreds of gatherings. We nurtured the seeds of growing movements for change at the time, like impact investing and natural capital and alternative currencies. And I won a person of exceptional ability green card to come and live and work here in the US. So I moved in 2016 to New York with my young family, and then on to San Francisco, where I really hoped to put down deep roots. And all this time, my friends and colleagues who I was working with were telling me about what it's like in the center of the country, and I hadn't really been very much. Seen as kind of less sophisticated and more conservative and generally a little bit of a downgrade. People were surprised that I was moving there, and so I wasn't exactly like super pumped when I thought about moving. But when I got there and I Googled systems change St. Louis, I discovered Heather. Where is my clicker? Heather is that runs the Midwest Climate Collaborative. It's just the most brilliant program, and I spoke to her, and she is an ex-older woman who has been living in the city for her whole life. And she said to me, you know, I don't have the ability, the luxury of being able to say, I'm not going to work with someone because they don't align with my liberal political agenda. So we have to make relationships forged on different things, and it makes our relationships stronger. And then I met Sarah Chung, who is like a maths genius, systems dynamics expert, world-renowned, happens to live in St. Louis, always has done, and is working on the root causes of systems inequity for early childhood education in the city. And then I met Natalie, who has lived in New York and also worked for a big foundation, and now has settled in St. Louis and is working on economic mobility for people who haven't previously benefited. So I thought, well, this is interesting. I'm finding some super cool people here, wasn't expecting to. And so this summer, I have interviewed 35 women-ex who are leading systems change initiatives and ecosystem projects in the center of the country, in the flyover states, the Rust Belt, the Sun Belt. As a Brit, I don't really know what to call it, but I will say this. It's the places where, when I say them to people who live in the international cities, they raise a bit of an eyebrow. And you might know what I'm talking about when I say that. This is a kind of a learned set of narratives that I had to learn when I arrived in the US. I didn't arrive with them. When I widened my search, I remembered that I knew Gail, and Gail runs REAMP, which is based in Duluth, and has been building the capacity of systems change across the region of Minnesota for a really long time. And then I met Irma, who is based in Arkansas, is coming from a place of lived experience of being an immigrant entrepreneur, and is building this amazing entrepreneurial ecosystem for her people, Latin community in Arkansas. And then I met Sam from Allentown. And Sam is running one of the most sophisticated systems change projects that I've seen in all my 7 years of teaching systems change internationally. These, there is an old feminist adage which says, whoever names the world owns the world. We are in the process of building the field of systems change. Now we are also in the process of building systemic investing. And as we fix those concepts, as evaluation frameworks take hold, we must be careful of the unintended consequences of the people that we leave behind if we don't include them in the conversation. I know from my experience that many of the people who are building these frameworks live and work in some of the most progressive cities in the world. New York, San Francisco, Boston, etc., etc. The context is just so different in those places. I know that from my own experience. Some of you might be in this room. Some of you might be building those frameworks and live in those big cities. Or you might think you've got out of it because you live in the suburbs, but you're surrounded by the people who live in the cities, and I know that. And that's cheating. And my plea to you is this. As we fix these frameworks, as we build our strategies, please do not overlook the kick-ass, brilliant women-ex who are leading systems change in the middle of the country. They deserve your respect. They really deserve a seat at the table. And they really deserve to partner with you and get better funded. Thank you.